Doubles and Coffee, conflict of interest. As you get ready to hear an announcement of your refinery, who it goes to, announced by Rowley and Smallpin and the PNM, that they put forward Scotiabank, an arm of Scotiabank, where it just happens to be that Smallpin's father had a long career at Scotiabank, and you have Vishnu Dan Paul, a permanent secretary, who, when there was some eye on the economy or some PNM conversations before the budget and so on with Coleman, but that I heard Vishnu Dan Paul espousing the policies of the People's National Movement as a permanent secretary. And I said to myself, but that's not your work. Your work is not to get up there and sell decisions made by the executive arm of the government. You are the accounting officer. You are just to simply account numbers. But Dan Paul was rewarded with a high commissioner position, perks. And now he's in charge of the committee to assess PNM's bids for your refinery that them closed down because Stuart Smallpin young client Malcolm Jones had run up debt of over $13 billion that stifled Petrotrin Refinery. It was brought to the fore by Rowley's friend, being accused by Rowley's own PNM board and independent audit saying an inordinate amount of oil just started to shoot out of the ground after a failed PNM candidate, Dioki Singh, was put in charge of monitoring the pump and so on. And that Rowley said is his friend, and Rowley didn't recuse himself. He stayed in charge of the Petrotrin, of the board. He fired a board. He stayed in charge. He shut down the refinery. He put his own personal lawyer, Kwamena, in charge of Heritage, who then made decisions on the arbitration of that issue. And you all sat there and take it. Conflict of interest. Why did this conflict of interest just hit me? I read an article yesterday, probably one of the best articles, by Charmaine Babulal about PAN and what is going on in the PAN fraternity and the possible conflicts of interest there with the current president of PAN Trinbago also being a manager of a medium band and her nephew being the arranger who has now made a three-peat and so on. And it's just, it's fraught with apparent bias. Now, I cast no aspersions and I have no inside information on whether there is interference, there is actual bias and so on. But the principle of apparent bias means once a reasonable person would think that the performance or the rules or the victory is brought about or the decision based on a relationship that you have, then that's enough for the benchmark of apparent bias, the threshold to be breached. But you should read that article. I must say the brilliance of Charmaine Babula to understand the history, the intricacies of PAN. They could see the love coming off the words in the article and so on. But it led me to believe, but how come everybody's so quiet? How come under PNM, conflict of interest is such a principle that gets buried under concrete and steel and rock and gravel? If you all remember when Kamla Prasad Visesa was Prime Minister, Anand Ramlo Gandhi, then Attorney General, out of exuberance, just excitement for the carnival and the music, said that in the Soca Monarch, when Soca Monarch was big, that he was supporting Marshall that year. And there was a tight race between Bunji Garlin and Marshall. And the media, the PNM media went wild and saying, since the government had increased the prize money, I think till 2 million and Groovy was 1 million, that Anand Ramlogan, as a member of the government, saying that was a conflict of interest and was showing bias towards Marshall, Montano, and so on. Down so much, the whole country was up in an uproar that Bunji put a version, an extempo version in his performance in the stadium in the Soca Monarch, calling out Anand Ramlogan and Kamla and telling Marshall to call them to help him win. And now that was all fair and that was right. But how come we get it so right when it do involve the PNM? Because even though Anand Ramlogan had nothing to do with the organization, the selection of judges, no influence. None of the judges were related or know anything about him. He don't know nothing about soca. He had no connection. He was not in the ministry that was in charge of funding soca money. There was no connection whatsoever. But just the appearance that the government was providing funding and the prize money, that was correct, that he should not have spoken out and given any favorite. I told him as such, but it was just done out of excitement and passion in the carnival. Here it is, whenever P&M is involved, somehow you all can't see conflict of interest. You all can't see apparent bias. You all can't see actual bias. You have your refinery going up, probably to be announced to another company with a checkered history, and you can't see the conflict of interest with Scotiabank and with Vishnu Danpal and with these people, but you could see Anand talking about he liked Marshall tune. What about when you see Davlin Thomas? Davlin Thomas is the P&M superhero. He on everything, from the hospital and one of the NCRHAs, come down the board, but he's also on the NCC committee. How many Dimash Gra, he as a deputy chairman of the NCC gave himself a contract from the NCC to organize and design and stage manage the Dimash Gra for how much millions of dollars? But you all don't see the conflict of interest. Jitsi, who is the head of the NCC, singing in extempo and singing in calypso and so on, who actually takes charge of paying judges, selecting judges, venues, so on and so forth, getting sponsorship, organizing the venue. This is actual control, but you all don't see no problem with that. How come when you see, and I took some notes, so bear with me this morning, because this thing bothered me. How come when Kamala in charge, you could see bias correctly, all right? Even though it really had no impact, but still, if you understand the principle, the apparent bias threshold was breached by Anand as AG saying he backing one artist over our next. But all you can't see, when Rowley cabinet and all of them sitting down and having meeting in Exodus Spaniard, and all these ministers now small pin linking up with BPTT, renegades, when it is small pin who goes across to Dragon 13 times $1.2 million, put all the eggs in Dragon basket, and it's BPTT who is the next partner along with Delcy Rodriguez and Maduro. It is BPTT who had a shipment of oil that was coming on the Manolates from Italy straight down into Appointee, and that shipment was loaded onto the Aldan. They say it was to go Aruba and St. Eustatius, but it ended up in Palo Alto, Venezuela, under sanctions. But you all don't see any conflict. How is Smallpin so close to these companies? Why is he the one with Rowley only negotiating? No corporate governance, no public servants, no permanent secretaries. What is Rowley and Smallpin negotiating with upstreamers, gas companies in Houston, face to face? Red flags for corruption. You're supposed to set policy and stay back and rock back. But you all knew that Anand Ram Logan, just by saying he backed Marshall. Now you're seeing Marshall in wedding, Al-Rawi holding umbrella for him, Marshall hugging up Smallpin in front of renegades with BPT, and all you don't find, there is conflict. But when Kamala in charge, you know about conflict. Let me talk about some more conflict, because the principle of apparent bias has been thrown away by the P&M. What about the interlocking directorships in the P&M, where they take away all the propriety, all the eyes on your money, and put Noel Garcia in charge of all the money? Put Rowley's neighbors next door in Inez Gate on 9 boards, Ingrid Lashley, Newman George, all of these people. Rowley own personal lawyer in charge of heritage. You all don't see the conflict there, but you see Anand say he liked Marshall's song. What about the recusals? We are seeing recusals like never before. Over 656 recusals. One super minister who's going to be selected to be prime minister got over 100 recusals. Ministers renting out the building. Al-Rawi getting rent and salary. Franklin Khan was getting rent and salary while the wife's still getting it. And Randall Mitchell getting rent and salary, rent from Trinbago, and walking around with steel pan jersey with Ramsey Moore all over the place, having taken pan fraternity land given to them by Bastille Prande, taken that and give them an office in some building that they're doing over for Noel Garcia to spend money to fix it up. Take away the opportunity from the prime man. But close and hugging up, but you all don't see the conflict there. How come you don't see the conflict when PNM there? What about Small Pin swearing to be Rowley's super minister? And all of a sudden, his brother got so lucky. The company that Angus Young was a CEO of get over $4.2 billion in work in the first 5 years. The first term of Small Pin. Rowley moved Udicott under from housing to the office of the Prime Minister, and the first contract that Small Pin brother company get was $180 million. The loan from who? Udicott. All you don't see conflict of interest there. All you don't see thing when it really affecting and impacting your money and where it's going and how it's being funneled and the rich getting richer and only the rich around the cabinet getting richer. All you don't see that. But you see Annan like Marshall Tune, right? What about friendships and connections? We already spoke about the issue with oil coming out of the ground. Rowley never recused himself. He told you at the onset, that is my friend. I called him. And then Rowley stayed in control and took decisions that impacted that situation down to the arbitration, the lack of appeal, the not listening to the senior counsel who said appeal it, and have a bareback man skinning up and smiling and bawling. He loved Rowley. He loved Small Pin like hog loved mud. He would make him his wife. And you all take that. Or you didn't see the conflict, but you see Annan like Marshall Tune. What about the indemnity with Nelson Gate? The fact that Small Pin was Malcolm Jones. First of all, attorney representing Malcolm Jones after Malcolm Jones was executive chairman and acted on instructions of other PNM, I'm hearing, and put the country and Petrotrin in debt to $13 billion. How come the PNM government under Al-Rawi, when Small Pin was a minister in the office of the Attorney General, withdrew a case that Annan Ramlogan had to try and get back 97 million pounds, multiplied by 10, nearly $1 billion. They pulled Malcolm Jones out of court. Or they didn't find as a conflict that Malcolm Jones' lawyer was involved in that. What about the case against Ken Julian with Bamboo Networks and Rowley took him down to South Africa and put him on the Energy Committee after taking him out of court and so on and moving forward? What happened to that? Or they didn't see the conflict of interest? What about Asha Javid writing still and now moved up, promoted to the editor of political investigative journalism for the Guardian newspaper when she made child for John Jeremy and an ex-PNM, and then in a loving relationship with Stuart Small Pin Young, so much so that after Paria bring fuel under sanction here, offloaded, and it end up in Palo Alto, Venezuela, she see a sanction clause in a contract that had already been consummated, but she see it lying down and she back next on with Small Pin on top of she. That is, you all didn't see the conflict of interest there, but you know about Annan like Tune. Dan Paul we talk about. What about Alison due diligence? Lewis, a former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, when we had to check out everything, she was there in FNGP, but Nikwan, get your ministerial gas, your assets gone to Nikwan. Nikwan owing about 500 million US. She on the board of Republic Bank. Nikwan get $120 million US loan that they're now in default and the whole thing shut down. But all they didn't find that was conflict of interest when she was also on a PNM board at the port. What about Joe Newell Williams and the Calypso? Look at down in South. Before Kurt Allen even sing, toilet paper come out, and you all find that fair. Only 2 out of 40 Calypsonians dare to sing about Rowley, the worst prime minister in the history of the Caribbean, the worst prime minister in Trinidad and Tobago, Bannon, and they're frightened to sing. Over the last 10 years, if you hear 6 or 7 Calypsos against the PNM, you hear plenty out of all because of payola, because Joe Newell Williams and the PNM control Calypso, but all you can't see conflict of interest there. But you could see that Annan say he liked Marshall Tune back in 2011, I believe it was, in that battle. So how come under camera you could see it correct, even when there is no real actual bias, no actions taken or decisions? You could see it correctly, but under PNM, all you're blind Ask yourself that as you enjoy the pan. Bless.